It's time! We are going to roll the boat over right now, and I just wanted to talk it over with you guys a little bit. We have wheels on ours. You know, not everybody uses wheels, and there's different ways. A gantry, we don't own a gantry, and there's no room for one. And, you know, there's other methods of dragging them and flipping them with manpower. I flipped an 18-foot skiff with manpower, and we had 6 firemen and myself and another guy, and we couldn't roll it over without it touching the floor. So this one here is considerably heavier, and there's no way to grab the boat as it's coming over. I mean, you know, a dozen Neanderthal men maybe make it happen, but we don't have that. So I decided the simplest way was to do it by myself, and I made these wheels basically out of scrap, and I can use them all over again. So it's going to work for me. We only have an inch or so on the top and the bottom, so it has to be rolled right over in place. We can't roll it over and then drag it across the floor and keep rolling it. That's not going to work. I can't drag it even an inch, you know. So we've got it jacked up here. It's on rollers, they're like trailer rollers at the bottom, and the wheels are going to roll over that, and it's just going to come upside right. One man commented about me finding the center of gravity, and I didn't find the center of gravity. I wouldn't even work on it. I'm sure that I wouldn't know exactly where it is, but I can tell you for sure that the center of gravity is way off center. It's down here somewhere. So as I flip it, its own weight is going to make it happen. It's going to come at me like this. And as it flips a little bit more and a little bit more, it'll get a little bit heavier, and then it'll start getting lighter at the bottom, and all of a sudden the boat will be right side up. There was a space created right in here between the wheel and the boat. And the reason I did that was because when I was building the wheel, I can't tell you exactly where it was supposed to be all the way across the boat. So, you know, it has a tendency to want to migrate that way actually because of the slope of the bottom and the side. So, you know, you have to have a method to keep it there. And I actually have it clamped right here to one of the frames, one of these vertical frames. And that works out pretty good. So, you know, the other thing is that, like I said, it's sitting on rollers. The weight of the boat up here is way past the center of gravity. And I just drove these little nails alongside the wheel because, you know, if say it would relieve the tension on one wedge or something as I rolled it, I don't want the wedge just falling on the ground. So, you know, those don't do anything except keep the wedge in place. So it's ready to roll. You know, we've got a line set up here. There was a time when I was making the wheel, I didn't know exactly how I was going to go about making the line wrap around. I was thinking about putting blocks on there, but you'd have to have so many of them. If you only put one here and one up here, the line keep changing advantage as you go around. So I finally got onto the fact that you can put it right around the edge of the wheel like that. And the line, as I roll the wheel towards me, the line is going to get gathered up in the slot like that. All made of scraps again, and we're pretty much ready to go. There's some other things. I got spreaders between the wheels, so they have to stay the same distance apart, and a few things like that. The carriage it's on is all mobile. You can kind of beat it around a little bit with a sledgehammer, and it slides and different things. These are centerline rollers for trailers, you know, and they're pretty strong and smooth, so they work out pretty nice. They're the right width for me and everything else. They run on a little axle across there. And I cut these corners out right here because it wasn't quite wide enough to accept the whole wheel width. So, and then it's got these slants right here, these bevels right here. So as it rolls, it wants to keep it in the center. And the edges of the plywood right here are pretty much 90 degrees. I just softened them up with a little grinder, but they should direct right through that roller just as nice as can be. I've got another pair of them back after. They're basically the same exact thing. Then it's got a clamp over there that really what that's for is if you wanted to put the brakes on, you know, or create more friction, you can put that clamp in place and clamp it right down. It'll squeeze on the wheel. So I think that's a good idea. I don't plan on using it, but, you know, that's one little setup we've got there. This is belaying. I terminated this line by drilling a hole through the slot right here, and it came out in here. Then I drilled a hole intersecting it right in here, and I put the line through there. Then I drilled a hole through the wheel over there and put the line through that, because I wanted the line to have a real low profile on this side so it would go through the guide blocks at the bottom and not get hung up on the wheels or anything like that. So I've got a stopper knot on the other side, and it should work out great. And overhead, I drilled a couple holes right in the floor upstairs, and I put a crowbar across there. So the line goes up through one hole, over the crowbar, down through, and around that clamp. Now, we're belaying the line with friction. We don't have to draw anything in, because believe me, you wouldn't be able to do it. And if anybody's worried about those clamps coming off, they're actually being pulled on, not off, so that shouldn't fail. So the line turns around that clamp right there and heads to the center, because I've got one coming from aft and one coming from forward, and I want to be able to tend the two in the same spot in the middle. I don't think you'll pull that clamp off. The other clamps are being pulled on, so there's no problem there. Now, I've just got it right down in front of me here, and I'm just going to belay it right here with my hands. And I can handle the two lines at the same time with one hand or two hands. I'll just close them right up like that. If I want to pay one out just a little bit more than the other, I kind of use my hand like a clutch and let it go. And I also have it wrapped around the clamps at the bottom. So I got quite a bit of friction to hold it back. You know, if it goes really, really well, I'll just pay the line out until the show's over. Now here at the transom, we've got it blocked up only on the other side because the boat's going to roll this way. And believe me, this is going to get close to the floor right dead center down there. Maybe has an inch or maybe an inch and a half, but I don't even think so. Maybe an inch from the ground this is going to be. Well, here we go. I'm rolling the boat over right now, and it's working out pretty good. Now, I've got a little bit of safety engineered into this thing, the lines that are belay overhead. I don't know exactly how much pressure or pull is going to be on those lines, but, you know, it's funny. I'm not embarrassed at all because, you know, they didn't have a lot of pressure on them. Really what happened was that the rollers down below the boat had so much friction that that extra weight of the bottom off one side of the center wasn't enough to overcome the friction of the rollers. So, you know, the rollers don't have bearings in them and everything. They're basically just a really hard axle against, you know, a piece of metal. So there's quite a bit of friction. And, you know, that's okay because I can just coax it over a little bit, you know, with a pry bar. And it's easy to do, and it's going, and I'm pretty happy about it because it's not getting away from me, and it's just working out great. I can't wait to get it right side up. Well, those little trailer wheels that I've got underneath it there have considerably more friction than I thought they might have. So, you know, I wouldn't classify it as a mistake. What I'd classify it all as is that it's overdone, you know, so that I won't have any problems at all. You know, even if I had a bunch of guys trying to flip it, it's very, very tricky because it's swinging an inch away from the floor and a couple inches away from overhead. So you can't lift it up when you're flipping it and you can't lower it down. So, you know, to coordinate enough manpower to do that exactly right, I would think to be a little bit difficult. So this is safer. It's easy for me to do. I don't care if it takes a little while, if it took 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or 2 or 3 hours. I really don't care. What I want it to come is upside right or right side up and not have any breakage or any, you know, tragedy along the way. So this is pretty controlled, and it's actually more controlled than I thought it would be because it doesn't go fast. And the belaying was almost an extra step so that I could make sure that it didn't get carried away. So, you know, it's going right over. We're pretty happy with it. And once I get it about halfway over, it does go a lot easier. And then as you get to the bottom, when it gets to the end of the flip, it gets a little bit harder again. But it's really nothing. So it's just going to work out fantastic here. We, you know, like I say, I got to take the wheels off afterwards, and you get a really good shot of what the boat looks like. It almost looks like a complete boat right now, but the shear is way, way too low. So, you know, that's what we're up to. I'm going to trim that fiberglass that hangs above the plank in places, and then I can add the next planks. Well, we've got the boat rolled over right now, and we've jacked it way down considerably lower than it was when we first rolled it. You know, we jacked it up a tiny bit and disassembled the wheels and took those out from underneath there, and then we've come down, oh God, maybe 18 inches since that time, and I've got it in the range now as far as height goes to be able to put the 2 planks on the side without kneeling down or working up here or having a staging. So the next 2 planks will go on, and you know, you can see that the frames are all a little wild here. You know, they're plenty high, too high, but we cut them all off afterwards, just like building a skiff. And we haven't determined exactly what the shear line will be. We can make reference of it with the model, but you know, we have our choice. We're still designing here. So, you know, the transom might be a little tall, like I said, and the stem is certainly too high. So it's only 6 feet across the bottom, but it looks really large. And the boat's probably 7 feet at the gunnels across a midship. So, you know, it's got a little flair to it. And, you know, but it's funny, when you look inside of it, it looks just like a work skiff ever looked to me. The frames are exactly the same way, put in the same way. You know, you don't know when you look inside that it's got a V-bottom outside of this, but it does, and it's going to ride really nice. This is a different kind of boat. We're going to power it with a single outboard motor with a stick. So it's going to be really fun to drive it because you've got the whole boat in front of you. You can see everything that's going on. It's really, really nice. And it rides softer back aft. So, you know, if you're in a sea that's pounding a little tiny bit, this is where you want to be, really, other than getting wet, you know, getting sprayed. But, you know, some people would put a little house on it or all kinds of different things. But, you know, I'll be anxious to drive it just the way it is with the gunnels on it and a single outboard motor. It's going to be fun when we put this thing in the water. This is a milestone right here. We're going to keep going. We'll put the next 2 planks on, which really isn't that much of a problem. Now, I've terminated the frames exactly the way I've done it in a skiff. You know, it's no benefit to have the frame fit right down against the chine tight. It would just hold water in between and things like that, because I didn't want to put enough angle on the top of the chine to get the water to run off. So what you do is you let the water run along the chine under the frames and spill off back aft. You have to make the frame deep enough so you have enough material here so it isn't like a 1/4 of an inch or something like that. And this is pretty good. This has got well over, this is about 5/8 of an inch hanging over the chine. It's fastened to the chine with a couple of screws. You know, it's pretty much exactly the same way a skiff is done, every skiff I've ever done. You know, the only difference is this one's got a V-bottom. And then we'll determine what the shear is and then put the guards on it. So, you know, in no time here, it's going to be looking more like a boat. It used to look like a boat itself when it was upside down. It seemed like it was almost complete, but obviously it's not. You know, the shear is going to be up here somewhere like this. So, you know, it's pretty nice to be able to look inside and get up in there and run around. It's got a lot of space on it. You know, to call this a skiff, you know, it's a skiff, but boy, it's a big one. We'll take a look up forward here. This is where all the fancy business went on, where the stem laps onto the keel, and I put those side pieces to really brace it up. And there's another piece on top, like a butt block sort of thing, that goes from the stem to the keel down in here. These are these twisted stringers that I put in. I wanted those because I wanted to cut the distance between here and there in half. So this really supports that. And those are in 3 laminates. It worked out really nice. It's got a centerpiece that's set on top of the longitudinal that's sitting on top of the keelson. So that's all together right in there. And we can see right here, I've got a conduit in here, because if you want to get wires or anything from the bow to the stern, you can just slide it right down through here. And you can interrupt that any way you want. Halfway down, if you put a house, you could cut a hole and then tap into this thing and run your cables or whatever you want to do down in there. And I thought that was the thing to do, because it's a little tricky getting underneath there. Now, this boat, in the bilge, it doesn't have any floor timbers across. So it doesn't trap any water at the floor timbers. You can rinse it right out. I'm just looking at the bottom up forward here, and it's pretty nice looking. You know, it's just another V-bottom boat, really. It's not a deep V. It's kind of a shallow V. It progressively changes as it goes back. And these boats move quite a bit easier than a V-bottom boat or a deep V-bottom boat. So, you know, that was the idea of that. And it's got great stability because of the shape back aft. This is going to cut right through the waves really nice. And I expect it to ride really, really well. And, you know, it's just going to be a fantastic thing. This is the only one, so, and the only one there's ever going to be as far as I'm concerned. So, you know, we're going to do the best we can and have as much fun with it as we can possibly have.